And we're off. It's Monday. It is, excuse me, it is Monday the 12th of December. It's 1 o'clock, and it's time for our weekly discussion, Pirkei Avot, History and Hashkafa, which is brought to you by the, excuse me, which is sponsored under the aegis of the Tel Aviv International Synagogue, under the inspired leadership of Rabbi Ariel Constantine. Okay, I see that once again I don't have a direct feed to the Shul website, so I'm going to have to put this up on as a recording, and I apologize. In any event, we have been the past few weeks really sort of slogging through a very repercussive and very important Mishnah, even though its words are few, its implications are many, and the Mishnah is attributed to Rabbi Akiva. We are in the third chapter, Mishnah number 13, and excuse me, and we have actually been concentrating. Let's go back and read the read the relevant lines. Rabbi Akiva was wont to say, "Schok kalod rosh margilim et margilim levra." Excuse me, lerva. Frivolousness and lightheadedness, irresponsible lightheadedness, irresponsible frivolity, can in fact predispose a person to misbehavior, especially sexual misbehavior. And then we have been spent the past 3 weeks, I think it is, Masaret Siag Torah, discussing the question of tradition being a fence around the Torah. I want to. We're going to continue. We're going to finish our discussion. I could actually go on and on like this forever on this issue, but we're going to. We are going to finish our discussion of these three words and go on to the next one, to the next phrase in the Mishnah today. But before we do, I want to pick up a theme that we started discussing last week, and that is the role of the past in determining the present and the future. One of the things that we discussed at length, and you're welcome to go back and take a look at last week's shiur. It's available either on my website, Rabbi Professor Jeffrey Wolf. It'll be there, I guess, in perpetuity, or on my YouTube channel. I uploaded it to there also. One of the things that I try to emphasize is the fact that in Judaism, at least in traditional Judaism, the past is something which is taken very seriously. Tradition obligates, just as truth obligates. We see ourselves as part of an ongoing chain, and we are as beholden to the past as we are, excuse me, to the future. The verse at the very beginning of Proverbs, when Shlomo HaMelech says, when King Solomon says, "Shema b'ni musar avicha," excuse me again, "Ve'al titosh Torah imecha," listen to the teachings of your mother and your father, is interpreted very, very commonly as meaning that which your parents give you in terms of instruction, in terms of the feeling of being part of an ongoing chain of transmission and of history, is something which is binding on us, and often we want that. It's something which places us firmly somewhere as opposed to being atomized. That's the reason in that verse, and this general idea that the tradition binds you, is the reason why people tend to follow the traditions of their fathers and their mothers in terms of how they set up their home, and whether they're going to continue the traditions of Morocco or France or Italy or Germany or Poland or whatever the case might be. You are where you come from. Now, and the truth of the matter is that there's something comforting in that, because you know who you are. I was watching some clips of a program with Professor Henry Louis Gates called, not Finding Your Fathers, I don't remember now what it's called, but in any event, And you have all of these very famous celebrities who are overwhelmed by finding out where they come from, because unless I know where I come from, I don't know where I'm going. But so tradition binds you. Tradition obligates, just as truth obligates, and a tradition is a type of truth. And it is the past, as much as the future, which binds a Jew in terms of his obligations towards his people, certainly towards God, but certainly towards his people as well. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, in terms of tradition, in terms of Torah study, and in terms of halacha, that it does not mean that one blindly does everything that one's ancestors did or one's parents did. There is room for not innovation, but in Hebrew we call it chidush, a novel interpretation, which is arrived at using the same tools that our predecessors used to arrive at the same, to arrive at their opinions. In other words, there is, first of all, a tension and yet a balance which is supposed to occur between the totality of Jewish tradition on the one hand, which is in the purview, it's part of the patrimony of every single person, every single Jew. On the other hand, there is room for innovation and insight, and especially when unparalleled or unprecedented circumstances arrive, and we have to try to figure out exactly what to do, and there is no clear guidance. The two basically, the sort of independence and authority, reverence and certain and individual thought, all of them have to balance one another. I will tell you, I'll give you an example that was of how this plays out, according to one opinion, which is fairly close to the norm. In the late 13th century, Rabbi Asher ben Yechiel, really the premier student of Rabbi Meir of Rothenburg, who ended up leaving Germany with sort of like the soldiers of the emperor behind him, chasing after him. He went to Spain. He's considered one of the great Ashkenazic authorities of all time. Rabbi Asher ben Yechiel, in his discussion about how does one arrive at, does one determine or decide between, different opinions of law that are received. And in his discussion in the 4th chapter of Sanhedrin, in paragraph 4, he says as follows. He says, the truth of the matter is that one really has to first see what do the collected wisdom of the ages say, and if there is a consensus that X is correct, and if the Jewish people as a whole, or the scholarly class has decided as a whole that X should be the case, then one's default reaction should be to follow that. That's Masorah. On the other hand, if you are absolutely positive that either that they were mistaken, or that the consensus does not fit the present situation, then one has the right to present a reasoned alternative and present it to be vetted by your colleagues, by other scholars, as a live possibility. In other words, it's not all done, and nothing is paralyzed. And sometimes what was the consensus up until now is no longer viable, and therefore within the legitimate options that have been parsed out by tradition, other possibilities can be certainly able to be raised. However, says Rabbi Asher ben Yechiel, it's not that common that a person is first of all has the gravitas to do that, or the ability to do that, or the room to do that. So be careful, tread very, very easily, because after all this, I mentioned last week, we're not talking, halacha is not the same as anything, the Torah in general It's not just any other discipline. We're talking about the veritable Word of God. And if you decide wrong, it's not a matter of if one decides wrong, then a few things are going to be the ramifications thereof. Number one, you will have distorted God's word. That by itself is heavy duty responsibility. And B, you'll cause other people to sin. That's so it doesn't even stop with you. It affects other people and their souls as well. And we believe in souls, and we believe in responsibility to God, and we believe in sin, and we believe in reward and punishment and mitzvot and so on. So this is a heavy-duty business, and that's why you have an interesting phenomenon. Among rabbinic scholars throughout the ages, from the time of the of Chazal, the rabbis in Talmud till today, called Yirat Hora'ah. Yirat Hora'ah is hesitation. Why should I get myself involved in this? Because I might make a mistake. On the other hand, the Torah. If the Torah can't be applied in every generation, then that would be a blasphemy, because that means that God gave an insufficient or imperfect Torah. So, again, you're in a sort of, I don't say it's a lose-lose, but you're in a very, very difficult situation in which you are obliged or you're inclined to not act, and yet you must act. So, how do you do that? Well, that's how those who study halakha know exactly how the broad range of responses to that kind of conundrum that in which one finds oneself. Nevertheless, neither pluralysis nor absolute independence are the rule. They balance each other out, and that is masara, siag laTorah. The tradition is a fence around the Torah, so that people don't sort of treat the Torah blithely. All too often, there is this almost blasphemous statement that the rabbis, or in general, the rabbis have always treated the Torah sort of as some kind of silly putty, some kind of plastilina, as we say in Hebrew, that you can just do as you want. There was an absolutely blasphemous statement that was attributed to somebody, that where there's a rabbinic will, there's a halachic way. Now, it is true that a lot of rabbis don't use all the tools available to them to solve serious problems like that of, recalcitrant husbands, or women can't get together, and so on. But there is a limit to that, and to say that across the board is nothing less than to impugn the religious integrity of 2,000, 3,000 years of rabbinic scholars, and not to mention the nothing less than a slap in the face, kivayochel, as it were, of God, as if God gave some kind of plasticine book to his people. In any event, there is room for change, there is room for adaptation according to its closed rules, but nothing more than that. And here, and I'll mention in passing, that I was recently asked, tomorrow I'm doing a podcast in Hebrew, about the difference in the Orthodox and the non-Orthodox denominations in the world, and this is one of those points. Effectively, from a methodological point of view, the attitude of the non-Orthodox denominations is that the Torah, was not given by God, and that it is a function of historical circumstance, and therefore, as historical circumstances change, person can change and adapt as they want. So the concept of being obliged or bound by tradition, which goes back to Sinai, is not a function, and therefore, even though very often Orthodox and non-Orthodox rabbis may be discussing the same sources, the same Gemaras, the same Rambams, whatever the case might be, they're essentially different books, because the attitude towards the book and the authority towards those sources and the authority that is attributed to those sources is absolutely fundamentally different. And that is and so it creates something of a that's what I'm looking for. Good. Dialogue of the deaf. Because effectively you're really not discussing the same things. Anyway, so in an Orthodox context, those are the various those are the various levels, the various nuances that are attributed to the word Masorah, tradition. We started with the precision in the transfer in the translation in the transfer of the copying of sacred text, starting with Chumash, then to Tanakh, and then to rabbinic literature. That moves on to the need to be precise in terms of repeating or carrying on oral traditions that were precedents that were presented by later authorities. Then we saw the question of Masorah in the 19th century became a question of, does one historicize tradition, and say that it's nothing more than a function of passing historical fashion. Then we went on to a more all-inclusive view, or more I'd say a broader view of what tradition means. Tradition doesn't just mean specific, information like how do you put on tefillin and how do you light candles and stuff like that, but rather also the ambiance in which one studies Torah. Here I referred you to. I discussed at length things that Mori Rabbi Soloveitchik used to say in terms of reverence when one encounters God in studying Torah, and always being aware of the fact that the Torah is either directly or by direct result or direct extension of the Word of God. When one studies Torah, when one decides a religious question, we are bidden to believe that God is in the room with us, and we're not just on our own. And then the methodological issue in terms of historicism and stuff that we mentioned just now. Okay, that's a lot more could be said about this, but this is that's where we're going to stop. The next statement. Next week we'll talk about Hanukkah, by the way. The next triad, the next three words are Masrot Siag Laosher. Tithing is a fence around wealth. So, what does that mean? So what's a tithe? A tithe, technically speaking, we're talking about Masrot, we're talking about tithing, we're talking about the tax system that is demanded, that is provided or presented by the Torah, especially in agricultural contexts, where every single person who raises either as a farmer and raises wheat or stuff like that, grows in the ground, or even animals, is obliged to give a certain amount of their produce to different people. So, for example, the priests are not salaried by the temple, by the Beit HaMikdash, and they are supposed to be supported by giving a certain amount of the produce of one's field to a priest, and then he can only to a Kohen. He can only eat it when he's in a state of purity. That's one type of gift, and the same thing is true of other things that are grown. The leva. By the way, one of the reasons for Soloveitchik say that all the time, if you look at the schedule, the work schedule in the temple, the priests at the most work 2 weeks a year. So that's a good deal. You get everybody under the sun gives you all kinds of stuff from their vineyard and from their orchard and from their fields, and you got to work 2 weeks a year. So the answer is so Soloveitchik said no, it didn't work that way. The priests were originally the teachers of the Jewish people, and that's what really they were paid for. In their places of residence, there were 24 actually major priestly cities, and they would teach. That's what Moses says to Levi. So the Levites are also part of this. Moses says to Levi in the blessing at the end of the Torah, Yoru mishpatech liYaakov, mishpatech liYisrael. They should instruct your statutes and your commandments to Israel. So that is, and in fact, the Kohanim, the priests, had a major role originally as the judges as well. So that's what they get paid for. In any event, Levites, who serve as the sort of maintenance and musical directors in the temple, they get 10% of the rest of what remains in the hands of the the farmer or the husbander after he's given the priest his part, and then there's another part, 10%. Then the 10% of the rest is given to in some years is put aside to be eaten in Jerusalem to make sure people go to Jerusalem on a regular basis, and then every third year it's given to charity. I mean, there's a whole system. I'm not going to go into it. If you're really interested, you are welcome to go and to study the first part of the Mishnah, which is called Zra'im. It's all about these rules. The best commentary on the Mishnah that I know of at the moment is that which was recently published, that of Rabbi Adin Steinsaltz. It is out in Hebrew. The best, as I understand, it's being put out in English, so look for that soon. So if that's okay, so that's what we're talking about, Masrot. So let's call it. You know what? Let's call it charity. Let's call it charity. Let's call it obligations to the common good, whatever the case might be. Masrot Siagla Osher. So therefore, the simple explanation, a lot of the commentaries say this, is, hey, listen, if the tax rate, excuse me, if the tax rate is that high, then okay, that makes sense. The tax rate is that high, then obviously, then no matter how much money you're going to make, excuse me, to 20%, whatever it's going to be, that's gonna take a chunk into your, it's going to take a bite out of your income, and it'll prevent you from ever being, amazingly rich. Why would you not want to be amazingly rich? The answer is because, first of all, so the simple explanation a lot of the commentators say is because people can have their heads turned if they have too much money, if they have too much power. So Torah comes in advance and says, no, you ab initio, you from the beginning have to give a certain amount of your money, a certain amount of your possessions to somebody else, whether it's the priests or whether it's the Levites or whether it's the poor, or you have to put yourself out and go celebrate in Yerushalayim and help support the Jerusalem tourist pilgrimage, what's the word, economy, whatever the case might be. And that's rooted in an even deeper idea, and that is to develop the awareness among on every one of our parts that liya kesev v'liya zahav, that at the end of the day, none of it belongs to us. We are bidden to realize that everything we have is a gift from God. So it's not masrot siagla osher, that the tithing is there to keep a limit on how much money you have, how many possessions you have, but rather on the negative impact of wealth upon you. Now, I had the privilege of, and sometimes it flips the other way around. I had the privilege of living in a lot of different places in the world, and one of the places I got to live was in Riverdale, New York, and I had at the time in the '80s, the early '90s, the opportunity to meet many, many, many fabulously wealthy people. And one of the things that stunned me was the incredible amount of tzedakah that they gave, on scales unbelievable, and without asking for acknowledgement. I'm going to say this again. People of untold wealth helping institutions and individuals on a scale that is really boggles the imagination without asking acknowledgement. In fact, one person that I knew, had the privilege of knowing, told me that, or actually the person's wife told me, that the reason why her husband, among the reasons her husband worked so hard to amass fabulous fortune, was because they were eager. They wanted to be able to give more tzedakah. In other words, it's not a matter of I made a lot of money and now I'm going to give my tzedakah and I acknowledge God. No, but now it's my money. No, the idea was, yeah, I want to enjoy life too, but I'm doing this because I want to give more tzedakah. That's going to be my mission in life. quietly, I want to be able to make God's world a better place. It's mind-boggling. So if that's the case, then Masrot Siagla Osher means that tzedakah, it's not to diminish your wealth. It protects your wealth, because that's the purpose of the wealth, is to give other people, is to give tzedakah in the broadest and most ethical way possible. In addition to that, and it was sort of close. It's really kind of there's something else that I wanted to mention. There is a Rambam. I'm not going to read on a lot of time now, but there is a Rambam at the end of the laws of theft, where the Rambam says that anybody who steals from somebody else has not just taken their possessions away, but they have, in a certain sense, violated them physically. There is an element of murder, says the Rambam. There's an element of shfichut damim in the act of theft. Why? So, one way of explaining it is the following. That which we possess and the manner in which we acquire it is our choice, meaning that it is therefore an extension of us. Should someone come in and therefore take something that belongs to us, it is the sense of violation, not just of insecurity, but of personal violation, is the sense of personal violation is incalculable. It's a form of murder. It's a form of murder. It's a form of shfichut damim. Now, if we talk about it, if you take that insight and you put it into our context, then the result is as follows: that a person who amasses whatever money they have, when they give tzedakah, they are giving of themselves. Now it's not the same. Now there are two different things. There is a difference between gemilut chasadim and tzedakah. Tzedakah is money. You know, a check or whatever, or a bit or a bank transfer, whatever it might be. And gemilut chasadim is where I actually hands-on go in and I feed the poor. I feed the hungry, and I clothe the naked, and I work in a soup kitchen, or I'm Chaver Kadisha, God forbid, whatever the case might be. That's really hands-on. However, when you give money of your own, that also comes from you, because your money is an extension. It's not you. You're not what you eat. And your money is not you, but it is an extension, an expression of you, where you take of yourself and give to someone else. So Masrot Siag La'osher would then mean that giving tzedakah, giving tithes, and there is this idea of giving 10% of one's income even today. It's not an obligation, but it certainly is something which many very fine people try very hard to do. It is to try to feel that one is giving of oneself, because it took a lot to invest of time and effort and sweat and tears to make the money. Therefore, your personality and your essence is imbued in that money. And when you give meiser, if you give tithe, or you give tzedakah, then it is not just a go away. You're not just giving go away check. You're actually giving a piece of yourself to somebody else. And that is the point. Okay, so we are stopping there. We will continue next week. Next week is the first day Hanukkah, right? Yeah. First day Hanukkah, so we will be, I'll probably talk a little bit about Hanukkah and some related issues. In the meantime, You are welcome to subscribe to the. This will be up on the YouTube channel. It'll be up on the on my personal channel. It'll be up on Tel Aviv International Synagogue, and you're welcome to comment and to send me questions. I know there are a few questions that are still waiting from last week, but it's been a little bit crazy around here. And we'll see you next time. Bye.